And welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. Right now, very happy to have back on the show Congressman Dan Goldman, a Democrat representing the 10th District in New York, serves on the House Committee on Judiciary and House Committee on Homeland Security, also a former federal prosecutor. Congressman Goldman, nice to see you. It's a lot of stuff going on in D.C. In fact, too much. Trump is aging the crap out of me. It's really been, I'm telling people, look, I'm 23. Look what he's done to me. Like, it's been a bad few weeks. This has been rough. So, I saw you tweeting and posting about things about your concerns with Elon Musk. First of all, just in the big picture, without getting too granular at first, what are the overarching concerns with Elon Musk, who's unelected, and these young guys who are like Apple Store techs who work for him have access to sensitive information? U.S. Treasury, I see SBA, a CDC, just one government agency after the other.
Well, there are a number of concerns. The first is what you mentioned, which is they have access to hundreds of millions of Americans' personal identification information. And there are no real guardrails because they have accessed these systems and databases in an improper way. Whether it's illegal will remain to be seen, but it's certainly improper. It jeopardizes the security of those databases and that information because it goes from the official secure server to whatever private server they're using. So it is significantly jeopardizing disclosure of basically every American's personal identification information. But there are additional serious concerns. The first is that an unelected billionaire has essentially usurped control over the federal government's system of making payments. And you may say, oh, that's fine. We don't want the federal government to make payments, but it is illegal because this is money that has already been appropriated. It's already been passed by Congress, and it's already been obligated, awarded, and designated. So these are payments that Head Start, Medicaid, Medicare, every grant recipient, anyone who's supposed to get a tax refund, that's how those payments are made. And he has unfettered access to it now. And there are reports that his teenage, minions, who of course don't have any security clearance, we don't know who they are. Some have been reported to have quite extreme views, but that they have changed the code. And if they're changing the code and there's no government official who is, part of this, there's literally no oversight and accountability for whatever Elon Musk is doing. And so he did that with the Treasury Department. Obviously, they froze a number of the payment portals for other services. But remember that these federal funds, which are already passed and obligated to be spent, are the lifeblood of many, many organizations. And sure, you can have large organizations like a state Medicaid fund that can exist for some time without getting the steady funding. But there are many organizations that have cash reserves of a week or less. And if they are not getting the money that they were promised, they will go under. And that will have a significant impact on the daily lives of every single American who, whether they know it or not, very much depend on this money.
Have you ever seen anything like this or read about this in the past in the U.S. history where unelected people we don't even know who they are going through every single agency, having access to the code, having access? It's not like a printout of what we spent money on or not. You can have a discussion about what should be funded in the future. This is actually access to the inner workings of Medicare, Medicaid, that agency, CDC, SBA, Department of Education I read about. Now something with the air traffic controller. I just saw Sean Duffy, Secretary of Transportation, going, and he's going to get our stuff next. I'm like, I've never heard of this in my life. Am I missing something?
No, you're absolutely not missing anything. And what's frustrating, to say the least, that's probably the nicest word I have, it is more outrageous, is the extent to which Elon Musk is taking control of our entire federal government. He's obviously doing it with the tacit approval of Donald Trump, but it is unclear how much oversight even Donald Trump is providing to Musk. But this is literally an oligarch taking control of our federal government. You can't say it any other way.
Mm-hmm.
It is as anti-democratic as anything that has happened in history. And I agree. We need to have better government efficiency. We need to cut red tape. We need to reduce bureaucracy. The government operates too slowly. And I'm sure that if you dig into a lot of these agencies, that there is waste, and that we should be focused on cutting that. But there's a process for that. And this is not that process. And if what Donald Trump wants to do is to reevaluate spending and come back to Congress and say, this is all of the waste that we have found. We would either like to cut some of the spending, to rescind some of the spending, or we'd like to use it elsewhere. Will you pass another law because we have to pass? We have the power of the purse. Fine, do that. That's a proper procedure. But you don't freeze all funding while you do an evaluation. You don't stop payments. You don't cancel government contracts that have already been given. And you certainly don't do that at the direction of someone who is not vetted, who is not elected, and who has billions of dollars of government contracts himself. The conflict of interest is outrageous. And so it violates, if he were an actual federal employee, it would violate all sorts of ethics rules and conflict of interest laws, including potential criminal laws. But because he's not a federal employee, though there are different ethics laws that apply to him. And as we know, Donald Trump doesn't care about ethics laws. So that's not something that is motivating him to put the brakes on what's going on. But I would say this is a slow motion effort to usurp the power of the federal government, but it's not that slow. And of course, the primary opposition to this should be Congress.
Yeah.
Because the president and Musk are taking Congress's power of the purse, power in many other respects. And the Republicans are in the Senate and where they're in the majority, and in the House where they're in the majority. They control both the Senate and the House. They are silent. They are complicit. They are going along with this. And in doing so, they are literally undermining their own authority and power.
I'm chatting with Congressman Dan Goldman. Just yesterday, and I played clips, Democrats in the Oversight Committee, and they're the minority, wanted to subpoena Elon Musk, and it was blocked. It almost seems, I mean, first of all, when you hear what Elon Musk is doing, the big billionaire, it's like reading something in Putin's Russia with the oligarchs coming in. Oh, he's one of his guys. He's gonna make more money. He'll streamline thing. But on some level, are they not the big picture? Like you're saying, undermining Congress's role, but even ushering in a potential dictatorship where they're going, it's okay to have a king. We're going to give up our Article 1 powers and let Article 2 take everything. I mean, I think it's deeply concerning, like a bigger picture where we might be going, like where this train is heading.
And that's why the outrage needs to be not only directed at Trump and Musk, who are executing this, but at Republican members of Congress who have taken an oath to the Constitution, not an oath to Donald Trump. And the Constitution very clearly sets forth the separation of powers so that the three branches of government can provide checks and balances on the others. And what the majority of the Senate and the House are doing is completely abdicating their role in being a check and balance on the administration and on the president because they are afraid of Donald Trump. And it's a lot of things, but the thing that I keep coming back to is it's kind of pathetic. Like, it's just, is that how weak you are as a human being? How little integrity you have? How little pride that you have? That if you're someone like Joni Ernst, who has spent your career trying to address sexual assault in the military, that because of a pressure campaign against you and the threat of potentially getting primaried and losing your election, that you completely cave on Pete Hegseth, who's, seems to, certainly very credible allegations that he has committed sexual assault, and now he's the Department of Secretary of Defense. It's just the way that Donald Trump has bullied this Republican Party is obviously dangerous because of what he wants to do and can do. But it's really pathetic to see these Republicans just completely cave to whatever he wants.
The checks and balance set up by the Constitution are undermined by that. That's the reality. This is why what I'm deeply concerned where we're going. You had tweeted about the potential that Elon Musk is breaking the law on a daily basis. And I'm laughing because it's sort of a dream if somehow it could be held accountable. Who would enforce it? DOJ is not going to enforce it. Even if he did arguably break the law at this point, who is going to enforce it?
Well, yes, that is one problem. Is we certainly can't expect anyone in the executive branch, including DOJ, which is supposed to be effectively the lawyer for the executive branch, the whole executive branch, not the president's personal lawyer. DOJ provides guidance to the executive branch about the legality and illegality of things that the executive branch wants to do. This is their job. And certainly to this point, they clearly have not done their job. But, as with a corrupt government, you would expect people in that corrupt government to not provide a check and a balance on the corruption. So, well, then you think, all right, well, Congress can do it. Well, we don't have standing to file lawsuits. So, and to the extent that Congress could, it is not an individual member of Congress. It has to be the entire body of Congress. And because the Republicans are in the majority, they control whatever legal arguments are made to a court. And just like the Department of Justice, they have shown no spine and no willingness to stand up to Trump. So what we are seeing now is a number of outside groups, litigation, either law firms or nonprofit organizations who are filing lawsuits in federal court representing whether it be employees of the executive branch agency or others who have standing to make this lawsuit, who have been injured or harmed by the conduct, and they're going to the courts. In addition to that, state attorneys general are filing lawsuits. And so that's why you have an injunction of that full freeze order by OMB to freeze all federal funding. You have an injunction against the elimination of birthright citizenship. You now have an injunction, I believe today, against Musk and his teenage minions accessing the Treasury payment system. So these are all private litigants. These are all individual people who are represented by lawyers outside of government who are filing these lawsuits. And there are going to be a lot more. And that is how, at least with these executive branch actions, that is the primary way of fighting them.
Yeah, in the last 2 weeks, I had on Attorney General Keith Ellison and William Tong from Connecticut talking about their efforts, and it really seems like they're on the front line. I got to get your reaction as a former federal prosecutor to Donald Trump first pardoning the January 6 attackers, including ones who brutally beat up police officers, and at the same time firing people in DOJ, and now we see like an FBI purge is going to happen of people who worked on holding them accountable and holding Donald Trump accountable. What's the message that you take from this action by Donald Trump?
This is exactly what Donald Trump said he was going to do. He said that he was going to go on a revenge and retribution tour against anyone who has ever tried to hold him accountable. And that's the media, that's the Department of Justice, that's the FBI, that's Alvin Bragg, that's Tish James, that's Fani Willis. Anyone who has tried to hold him accountable for misconduct or breaking the law or criminal actions is going to be the subject of revenge and retribution. And he wants to whitewash history. He pardoned hundreds of violent criminals, many of whom admitted to their own violent illegal conduct. Others were convicted by a unanimous jury. And the pictures are clear. There are some of these sentences were for seditious conspiracy, which is almost never charged, to try to overturn a conspiracy to effectively undermine our democracy. And some of these sentences were, double digits, 18, 22 years. Yeah. Trump just let them all out. I mean, one guy, Daniel Rodriguez, tased Michael Fanone, an officer, caused him to have a heart attack and a stroke that he barely recovered from, and pled guilty to it, and was sentenced, to a significant sentence, just let out of jail. And the severity of that, I mean, the reality of that is this has created now a right-wing militia that is completely beholden to and in support of Donald Trump, and are prepared to take his bullying threats and act on them, just as they did on January 6th. So, that is another way that our democracy is undermined, which is that people have to fear that if they do stand up for what's right, they're going to get violently attacked. And that's all part of this effort to undermine our democracy, to dismantle our democracy, and to take totalitarian control over the federal government.
It absolutely is. And last question, Congressman, and it comes up a lot from listeners on this show about what's our message and what's the Democratic Party's message? And we mean like the elected officials, and also what can the grassroots do in terms of pushing back against Donald Trump? So is there a struggle? There was an article in the New York Times over the weekend, an interview with 50 plus Democratic leaders of different levels, saying we're having a problem finding a coherent message. Is that fair to say? Or is there one and we're just not hearing it the same way because the corporate media is just driven, like they're like a moth to the flame with Donald Trump? Anything he says or posts, they just cover that nonstop.
That is a big problem. And look, there are so many lawless actions happening at the same time that, if you are to have a coherent message, you focus on one or two things. But if we were just to focus on the January 6th pardons, then we're not focusing on Elon Musk. Mm-hmm. And if we were just to focus on Elon Musk, then we're not focusing on the dangers of Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel getting confirmed and overseeing our entire intelligence apparatus. And given their own track records, our allies and our sources will run for the hills and will never provide us with intelligence that we need for our national security. And then if we are focused just on that, then we're ignoring the purge at the FBI and the DOJ, which is going to absolutely destroy those institutions. And those are our critical institutions of legal accountability in the executive branch, because none of these people did anything wrong. There's no evidence or proof that anything they did was not purely consistent with the law and the rules and regulations. It's just that Donald Trump didn't like it. And so he's created this whole narrative that is bogus about the fact that this was politicized and weaponized. It wasn't. He
Hmm.
created this whole narrative. He's tried to create this whole narrative that January 6th was a beautiful walk in the park. It obviously wasn't. We have the photos, a video to see it. And so these are existential risks. So yes, you're not going to have every Democrat focusing on the same one of those things. But what we are trying to do and what we have to do is separate the wheat from the chaff. We cannot chase every one of Donald Trump's outrageous statements.
Right.
And frankly, we haven't been talking about the Gulf of America or Panama or very much about Greenland. We're focusing on the things that he's doing,
Hmm.
not the things that he's saying. But the media is focusing on the things that he's saying.
Yeah.
And the media continues to chase every outrageous thing he says. And Donald Trump knows that they will. So in order to distract from the confirmation hearings and process of Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel, or the total invasion and infiltration of our federal government by Elon Musk, Donald Trump says that he's going to remove 1.8 million Palestinians and take over Gaza. It is never going to happen. And yet, all day long, that's all the media is talking about. And all the other, that's what he says. He hasn't done anything about it.
Right.
But what he is doing right now is what's really dangerous. And he is an expert at distracting from the bad acts that he is doing. And the media continues to fall for it. We are doing our level best not to fall for it.
I understand.
But I will say, I go on cable TV regularly, and we reached out to see if anyone, wanted to come on to talk about the DOJ purge and the FBI and why that is so damaging from my experience as 10 years in the DOJ. The answer was no, that they were focused on Gaza and Trump's statements on Gaza. So we can all, we try to, I come on with you,
Sure.
talk about it. We try to go to all sorts of different outlets and sources. But it's not just Democrats that need to stop chasing the outrageous things. It's the media that really does as well.
I agree, and you should just come on my show. That's it. We don't need cable news. It's die. Very last thing, in the literally last minute, with the purge in the FBI, because I had Frank Figluzzi on recently, and he has an article about how it's making us less safe. Donald Trump's also offered a buyout to every CIA employee, every single one they've offered, and NSA, and they're not going to replace these people. Are you concerned he's actually making our nation less safe?
I'm not
Not-
concerned. I know he is making our nation less safe. And it takes too long. It takes a long time to explain how. But and I alluded to it. These CIA agents, these FBI agents are well trained. Many have learned of different languages. Many are expert at developing sources. Now, sources are double agents from other governments who are giving us information. That information is essential to how we defend our homeland and our national security on a global stage. If you are firing these people, you are putting in lackeys for Donald Trump who have no experience, no ability to do this. There isn't a single double agent who is going to continue to give information to one of Donald Trump's buffoons that he just places in the CIA to do his dirty work. And so if we don't have those sources, we aren't getting intelligence. And then if our allies think that we're going to abuse the information that they give for political purposes, or we're not going to protect it with Tulsi Gabbard or Kash Patel overseeing it, which they won't, then they're not going to share information. So we are going to get so much less critical intelligence that we use every day, and it doesn't get publicized. We use it every day to stop terrorist attacks, to stop massive drug transactions and criminal enterprises, to stop so many things that jeopardize our daily public safety and national security. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, Dean. I could go through so many other ways in which this purge eliminates people who are good, patriotic Americans. Frankly, in the FBI, the vast majority are Republicans, but no one knows because they're apolitical and nonpartisan. They're just trying to make sure that our laws are upheld and that Americans are kept safe. And by attacking them, by removing senior officials, you are removing hundreds and hundreds of years of expertise and experience and institutional knowledge, and that jeopardizes every single American.
I so appreciate it. And sincerely, if there's ever times that you want to talk about substantive issues that cable news doesn't have no appetite, you're welcome. I'm not kidding. You're welcome on with the same point you just made. Frank Figliuzzi was just on saying the same thing. What foreign allies are going to want to share information with us? The Five Eyes. He goes, why are they going to want to, and how are we going to turn people? The same things you're saying. And he goes, and now some of these FBI agents are getting fired. They're disgruntled. They're the kind of people who could turn. And he's not saying, he said, I hope that never happens. But if he said, I would go talk to them if I was in my position the other way around. He goes, these are the people you want to go to. So, but Congressman Goldman, thank you for your time, my friend. It's always great chatting with you. I look forward to chatting with you in the future.
Anytime, Dean. Always enjoy it.
Have a good day.